Yo, welcome to Containing Luxury. On today's episode, we're actually going to be covering a couple of things we wish we would have known before we got started on this build. So let's get started. I just said let's get started twice. Okay, so what do I wish I would have known before I started a container build? One of the biggest things was how big of a nightmare it was to move the shipping containers around. And that was one of the other things we touched on in some previous videos of transportation, how it's really difficult to find a trucking company, depending on where you purchase them, if they'll include shipping or you gotta arrange your own. In my case, since I bought a used container from an individual, we had to arrange our own trucking, which was a nightmare. First of all, I got quotes, for $800, $1,000. Finally got a company to do it for $400, so they claimed. It took us, no exaggeration, probably 4 hours to move this thing. This guy was having a nightmare with it. The truck was way bigger than it should have been. And it was just a poorly organized system that they had in place to do it, because I guess it's not very common that you're gonna find somebody that's set up to move shipping containers. Usually they're going from a port to a train station or trucking location, so they kind of have bigger equipment and it's more coordinated. So in our case, we use that shipping company. They try to bill it out. 3 weeks later, I finally get a call from them. And they're like, yeah, you owe us $850. And I'm like, no, that's not happening. I purposely called you and got a quote for it. So I made them hold true to it. I was like, there's no way I'm paying you $850. I sat around in my house, waiting for this guy. He went to go get lunch. You're not billing me $200 an hour for this. So that's one thing you gotta, watch out with. South Florida is pretty bad down here, so it's very difficult to find reputable people. So when you do, make sure to keep using them. But just the coordination, the setup that you need to move them, and then the clearance that you need to move them. So I designed my house, because we have a construction company, to move big trailers. So I designed a section of my driveway. It's a big U. And I have 2 sets of pillars that are extra wide so that I could swing big trailers to be able to get in, or I could pull past and back in with them. It was still a nightmare. He barely could make the turn. Then when we got it in, the truck was so overkill. The container's 40 foot long, and he probably had 40 feet of extra space on this thing between the truck and a huge section of flatbed that wasn't being utilized. So it was just not the right truck for trying to pick up a container in a confined area and get it into another residential setting. Now, the other part of when I was going through that transportation that I noticed is it was really violent on the container itself. So unless you want to spend the additional money to get a crane truck to come out, or a crane, and pick it up, or if you have access to a big forklift around, but that's very unlikely, then you got to get it picked up and craned onto the truck. Now that's a lot less violent. It's going to cost you a lot more money, but it's a much simpler system, because all these other guys were, coming with a flatbed trailer that hydraulically lift up, and then they put a winch attached to it and literally drag it onto it. It shreds your lawn or whatever it's sitting on. And then getting it off is virtually the same process. So my yard was destroyed. I had to go through and, fix my driveway and all different things. So I realized real quickly I was not going to be using that system when moving this. Now, we built this container with a do-it-yourselfer type of idea involved. We knew that this container was never going to sit here. We've had a million people comment on our foundation. It's like, this is not sitting here permanently. So anyone that sees it sitting on the concrete blocks, it's temporary. It's not how we would recommend it. We never once recommended that. So when we pick this thing up, I need to take the whole roof off. I've got to disassemble a lot of stuff that we installed just to show you, which I know we didn't get to our roof video, but we will at some point before we disassemble, or we'll shoot it when we're disassembling so that you can see how it went together. Complete tangent, ADD. So we've been working with some guys to solve that issue for our personal sake. Now, if you're doing this on a do-it-yourselfer basis, there's no way this would be a good investment for you. But we're gonna have a trailer designed and made so I can move these using my truck. We want to make it as least violent as possible on it, because now we have glass and containers and windows, containers, cabinets and windows in. So we don't want this thing to be like dragged and dropped into place. We want to make it as nice and easy on it as possible. So we're designing and building a container trailer to transport these for ourselves. So that's something that I wish I would have known going into this, which also then gets to the second, probably most important part for me, was the where do I build it? Quick break, then we'll get back to our video. We did the poll. I don't know if you guys are new to our channel, if you've been watching our channel, on the community section. In our last video, we asked you about sponsorships, and the poll was between Stay Patriot Clothing and Blackout Coffee Co. Blackout Coffee Co. was the majority winner. One of the really cool things about Blackout Coffee Co. and why we chose to go with them is one, they're local, two, it's small batch, and they roast in-house. And the really cool thing is when you order online, within 3 days, that coffee will have been roasted and be to your house. So you really don't get much fresher than that if you're buying off the shelves. We just wanted to share with you guys, there's a link in the description. There's also gonna be a coupon code. Thank you guys for letting us chime in. Back to the video. If you had a shop, or you have like a big, open area at your house and it has all of your tools and equipment, it might make sense then to build it there, if you have a commercial setting. But being that I need to go through that hassle of moving this thing, and there's a lot of risk involved, I would say majority of the stuff that was done in this could have been done on site. So, but then you have so many factors that go into that. Should you have your container with your expensive materials sitting wherever it is? Is it safe? Is it secured? Is it locked up? So there's obviously a lot of different things that come into play for that. But if I was building like a multi-container home, or building even a single container, and it was just like a one-time thing, I would probably just build it on site. I wouldn't go through the hassle. Not to say if you're planning on doing this and you have a factory, well then yeah, 100%, it's way better to build it there, and you'll have the money to spend on the moving equipment and doing it, you'll have a system in place essentially. But if I was doing this for my own personal thing on a do-it-yourselfer basis, or I wanted to build a 2-container home or 3-container home, I would as soon as I went from purchasing of the container, it would go right to where it's going. And I would build everything on site there, because the transportation is not, it's a pain, and it's really rough on the container. It's expensive, and I just wouldn't take the risk of something happening after all the time and money you put into this thing. So those are the two things. Transportation is a nightmare, unless, I'm sure there's gonna be guys that are like, oh, I have a truck that can do it in 2 seconds. Okay, well, great, that's for you. But for majority of the people, I would say transportation is such a pain. Get it picked up and do that one time. Get it picked up from wherever you're buying it from, deliver it to where it's staying, and keep it there. And if there's people watching our channel that have gone through this and want to share what was difficult for you, hit that in the comments, because that's going to be a big help. I think throughout this build, there's so many facets to start to completion that each individual's issues that they come across are going to be, to the individual. For me, it was the moving and the where we were building it. Again, for you, might be something completely different. Make sure to chime into the comments so other people can learn from what was difficult for you. And if you have questions, hit those as well. Again, check out Blackout Coffee in the description. There'll be a coupon code for you there, so make sure to use that. Always free shipping and a lot of great holiday flavors. We'll catch you on the next one, guys. Thanks.